South Carolina has now appointed Senator Lindsey Graham's sister, Darlene Graham Nardone, as his temporary replacement in the Senate 2 days after the lawmaker's sudden death. President Trump took to social media yesterday to recommend Republican Governor Henry McMaster appoint Graham's sister to serve the remainder of Graham's term, which expires in January, writing, quote, "This would be a fabulous tribute to Lindsey, who loved her dearly. Darlene is 9 years younger than her brother and has never held public office. Her parents died before she reached the age of 14, and Lindsey Graham later became her legal guardian. She is currently the commissioner of the South Carolina Commission for the Blind and serves on the state's Workforce Development Board. She will serve in the Senate role ahead of the special primary later this summer to decide the new Republican nominee for the Senate seat." So, Jay Mart, you've got a new piece out in Politico remembering the life and the legacy of Lindsey Graham. The headline calls Graham a politician in full. I know you covered him closely for a long time. Joe's known him for decades. What are sort of your memories of him, and how will he be remembered in Washington and South Carolina?
Well, as the ultimate politician, he was relentless. You know, there are a handful of people in public life that you guys know, that I know, who every day they go. Rahm Emanuel obviously is the Democratic version of this. Lindsey Graham comes to mind. There was a sort of hustle, a great American story, right? He grew up in the back of a pool hall in rural South Carolina and gets to the heights of global power with presidents, prime ministers, and royalty. It's a great American story, but it's also just the classic American tale of somebody who was going to hustle their way to the top. He was married to his work. And, he never had a family, obviously. He was constantly traveling, constantly acting, Willie, as the sort of ambassador without portfolio, self-assigning roles. I mean, one day he could be the head of the Senate campaign committee. The next day he could be the top judicial advisor to the president. After that, he'd be the de facto envoy to the Middle East. He didn't wait for an assignment. He rode to the sound of the guns. And there's less of that in Congress today. There's less freelancing, less entrepreneurship, but he really embraced that. And just lastly, he did it with gusto. This was somebody, whether you liked or hated his politics, man, he was having a good time. He was so full of joy. I'll just end with this. I interviewed him at the Munich Security Conference, Willie, in February. And he was joking with me that he was spending so much time shuttling between the Gulf states and Jerusalem, trying to get the Saudi-Israel normalization done, that he was tempted to open a Chick-fil-A in Israel. But he noted, of course, it'd be closed on Saturdays, not Sundays in the Holy Land.
There you go. Lindsey, you are right. Lindsey just worked around the clock. I mean, any Codell that there was, Lindsey was overseas.
He was on it. Yeah.
He was on the Codell. He was, anytime there was a dinner, Capitol Grill or anywhere, I'd go out once every 3 months and Lindsey'd be there, with a group of people around him. He worked around the clock. Mike, Lindsey, though, Lindsey's story really is the story of the Republican Party from, the day that I stepped into Congress until the day he died, because he was a shapeshifter. When I was there were 12 of us that raised hell every day about balancing the budget. And Lindsey was there with us. He was one of the 12. And it was intimidating. You had like the most powerful people in Washington screaming at you and, yelling. And, we got called down one time to HC5, and Gingrich and everybody else were yelling at the 12 of us, made us stand in front of the entire caucus. And Steve Largent got up. Gingrich said, you explain what you have done. You have shut down the House. You have destroyed our majority. You have humiliated the Republican Party. Explain what you've done. Steve Largent was the first person that came up, and he said, Newt, I used to catch balls across the middle, arms fully extended. I'd have 280-pound guys who not only could kill me, but were actually trying to kill me. Sometimes they got pretty close to doing it. I'd be knocked out for hours at a time. So, Newt, you can't intimidate me. And he went on and gave a great speech. Lindsey stood up next and said, my name's Lindsey Graham, and Newt, as you know, you can intimidate me. And the whole place just erupted.
Yeah, that's who he was.
But then Lindsey went on and said why he was sticking with the 12 of us, and we were going to continue to shut down bill after bill after bill after bill until they came up with a plan to balance the budget. And so that was Lindsey Graham, 1995, 1996, 1997. We were all sort of surprised when he went over to the Senate and he became John McCain's guy. John, we all loved John. John was a war hero. But he didn't care too much for us because we were always causing trouble, shutting down the House, fighting too hard for balancing the budget. But they got along, and you know, he was with a great, honorable man, a public servant. And then we saw him go to Donald Trump. And so you can really, again, you can trace what I would consider to be the fall of the Republican Party just based on the people that Lindsey associated himself with. And, you know, but that said, I have wonderful memories of him. Said a lot of tough things about him here. But when I saw him at the 30th reunion, he was smiling, laughing, joking, which he always did. He never took anything personally, very kind to my family. And that was the guy he was.